Yes, just at the beginning to give you the context, we are the plant-based campaign, so obviously we take care of the plant-based industry in a sense. And plant-based industry in Europe is growing very fast. Also in Poland it is growing very fast. In the recent years it slowed down because of the crisis, because of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, but it is still growing. So in 2022, plant-based industry in Europe reached 5.7 billion euro, and this is 6% more than in 2021 and 22% more than in 2020. So you can see that this is rapid growth. Even if it's slowed down recently, it's still growing. And in Poland, this is in 2022, the sales have reached 155.4 million euro, which is actually, don't look at the percentage on the slide because that's my mistake. It is actually 54% more than in 2021 and 109% more than in 2020. This 44% and 99%, that's the unit sales growth, not the euro sales growth. So that was my mistake. But you can see that it's still growing. Yes, and as I am taking care of the advocacy work in our campaign, I would like to show you what we have now, what we want to work in the future, and how we want to make it happen. So, Polish political environment, I have 4 points that I will briefly describe to you. First of all, we have in Poland a big meat and dairy lobby, and this is our main obstacle, as they are very active on the political background. They have connections with the biggest, most conservative parties, but also with other parties. And also Poland, it's important information, Poland is the biggest producer of poultry in Europe. And according to the European Commission's, the Polish share of EU poultry production in 2021 was almost 20%. And 1.5 billion chickens are raised annually in Poland. So it is a big amount of big number of animals. It's a big topic and it's very difficult for us. As plant-based is a new industry, it's still growing. It's at the beginning phase of production. And of course, meat lobby and dairy lobby is there for many years and has big economic and historical background. Just to give you the idea, currently the average Polish people eat more than 70 kilograms of meat per year and more than 200 kilograms of dairy per year. So these are big amounts of food, big amounts of animals that are being produced. And the meat lobby right now, they are very active towards the denomination campaign. So basically, they would like to see the ban of meat terminology towards plant-based products, which we believe is dangerous because it can confuse people and make them not so willing to try new plant-based products. We also have elections this year, big Polish parliamentary elections, and this is a chance for us because we want to talk with politicians and make them active. And we want them to have their statements in the topic of food system transformation. But this is also a dangerous moment for working in the advocacy because Polish media and Polish stage is very, very polarized. So it's dangerous sometimes to talk about something that is more, how to say it, that is not maybe so black and white. You know, there are many controversies. Yes, it's more controversial. And also next year we will have European elections and local elections. So it's a hot time for now. And also the Polish background is more conservative. We still have the legislations that was being voted many years ago and doesn't include, for example, plant-based drinks, plant-based milk, or plant-based alternatives in general. And no one in the government is feeling like we should change it So we basically have this narrative that it is like it is and we should keep it that way. And we want to change it, of course. And also the EU regulations, I believe, is a big chance for us, but Marcin will talk more about it, so I will leave it to him. And what we need. These are our 4 priorities, I believe, and I would also like to talk a bit about them. So I believe the most important right now are the public funds and incentives. We need the system that would support the plant-based production and that would support the accessibility towards plant-based diets, plant-based products. And this, in our opinion, this cannot be done without the system, without funds, and without the legislation that would support those products and the production and in general the consumption also. Public procurement, school canteens, it might sound simple because we want students to have access to the plant-based diet, but also in general people to have access to the plant-based diet in hospitals and in the cities in general. And this is a big thing because it also makes plant-based diet more accessible. For example, in Warsaw, probably it's easier to find a school that would have plant-based meals than in smaller city. And we don't want it to be different. We want every kid to have this accessibility. And also that would increase the demand. So also make the gap smaller between animal products and plant-based products, the price gap smaller. Also grassroots professionals education. We know we want the change, but we need people who can be that change, let's say it that way. We need doctors who know about plant-based diet, who will be willing to work with plant-based, with people on plant-based diet, with patients who are willing to stay on the plant-based diet. And in general, we need them to have the basic knowledge about it. Also dietitians, but also food technologists, those chefs that will be cooking the plant-based diet at school, for example. So it's the whole system that we should change, and we should make it from the bottom to the top, let's say. And the accessibility, as I mentioned, we would like to see the system that is promoting the plant-based diet and that is not creating the gap between smaller cities and big cities. In Warsaw, you can see a lot of vegan, vegetarian restaurants. In smaller cities, it is different. It's much more difficult to buy plant-based products, and the system should support this accessibility. Actually, according to the studies, more than 50% of Poles are saying that they want to consider sustainability when they are buying things. So they declare it. The problem is that when you are in the shop, you see the price and it's the price that decides. So we need a system when the price will not be a big issue for them and they will be able to actually do what they declare. So pick something more sustainable, which is also plant-based. And what we do as our campaign, right now we are launching the Polish Union of Plant-Based Producers, the first association of plant-based producers. We want to give them the platform to speak on the government level, to speak with politicians, but also to raise voice as one. We are building relationship with politicians, and this can be challenging. We have just started it, so it's still work in progress. We have to look for many different arguments to talk with them, but we believe that this change should start also with the politics. So this is our big task right now, especially using the election time, and that they are more willing to talk with us probably right now because of the elections. We want to make politicians active. We want them to talk about food system transformation, to raise voice. We are organizing meetings in the parliament, because in the Polish parliament you have groups that, for example, talk about climate change. And we recently had a meeting in the parliament about the plant-based initiatives and plant-based investments. And also in Poland, it's possible for every politician in the parliament to send a question to the ministry, for example. So we try to convince them to send as many questions as possible. The questions that would evolve around plant-based initiatives to make this topic more visible and also to raise their awareness about it. And we also try to raise the media visibility about food system transformation. Is it effective? It's a big question, also a big question for us, but I am very proud of myself for finding this graphic because these are us in many situations, dressed in a suit and trying to roll this rock up the hill. I believe it is very important to ask the question when we are working on the campaign, is it effective? How can we be more effective? But actually it is very hard to measure if we are effective, for example, talking with one politician. It is probably harder to just measure it in a mathematical way. But I believe that only because we can't measure something, it's not argument good enough just to drop out of it. And there is something that is called measurability bias. And probably I don't have time right now to speak more about it, but I would recommend the podcast How I Learned to Love Shrimps. How I Learned to Love Shrimps with David Coman-Heidi. So he mentions it and talks more about it. So I would highly recommend. But we believe it is effective because we want to create a long-term change and we want to scale up the effects. Working with business is also very good and very progressive, but we are there already and we want to be higher. We want to scale the effect, make it affect the whole country, not just one city. And the number of animals, it's also important. As I said, it's harder to measure, but as Anima International, we have also a plant-based campaign in France. It's called Assiette Végétale. And they are working with the canteens. And I asked them for some numbers, and they said that in France, there's around 1 billion there's around 1 billion meals in France, and 15 to 20% of them are vegetarian. So that's a big amount of meals per year. And they, as an organization, as Assiette Végétale, they are directly responsible for 1.7 million of those meals. So that's a big amount of meals and also a big amount of animals that are influenced with this system. Yes, at the end, I would like to ask the question with you, how do we see our work? And I believe this is not how we see our work, so it will not be straightforward. We will make bad decisions and also good decisions, and probably some things will work out better than the others. So this is definitely now how it will happen. It's not so straightforward. We believe this is more the representation of our work. So we need different initiatives for different crowds, also for different bubbles. Some of them will be effective. I hope all of them will be effective, but some of them probably we might drop out during the process, but we need different approaches for different groups, especially when it comes to the systemic work and the policy work, when, for example, you have parties from different backgrounds and different arguments will be reaching different parties. Yes, and first time in my life I am finishing the presentation with a quote, so very happy for that for me. But I would really recommend also this book. If you haven't heard about it, Marcin is also having it here. I think this is a good start to the pragmatic view on the plant-based diet, and also a good start to the systemic work, because I don't think that one person decision about the diet is making as big impact as the systematic change could make in the future. And we don't want to create a partially vegan world. We want to create whole vegan world in the future and plant-based world, and the world when it will be easy and possible for everyone to choose plant-based food. So thank you. You can reach out to me. We will have questions after that, so I will be happy to answer them. And now I will give the floor to Marcin.
Thank you, Alicja. And before we will move with my presentation, just to answer about the books, I have some free copies of the Tobias Lennart book, How to Create a Vegan World. It's in Polish, so for those of you who don't understand this language, it's a great opportunity to learn some Polish. But yeah, just letting you know that I have some copies. So if anybody is interested, I can distribute the free copies after the presentation. And let's move on to my few slides. As Alicja mentioned, should be like a 15-minute presentation. Then we'll have some open time for free discussion. Hope that there will be many questions. And so let's move on. My name is Marcin Tischner, and I will briefly talk about some opportunities, some challenges in the legislation area in terms of alternative protein, in terms of more plant-forward policies, in terms of some policies that could potentially reduce meat and dairy consumption from perspective both of EU level, European level, national level. Those approaches, those levels will somehow mix during my presentation. But to start with, I would like to briefly mention the organization that I'm representing here. So I work for ProVeg Poland, which is a Polish office of an international organization called ProVeg International, which is a food awareness organization working to transform the global food system by replacing animal-based products with plant-based and cultured alternatives. We want to reduce the animal products consumption by 50% by the year 2040. And we believe there are many good reasons for doing it. 5 of them are mentioned here on the slides, and they are actually so-called our 5 pros. So 5 reasons of why we do what we do. This is taste, this is health, this is justice, animal welfare, and of course environment. And we are working by approaching many different stakeholders or many different levels with a different messaging, with different communicates. So we encourage individuals, families, citizens to try more plant-based diets by public education, by media, by social media, by many of our online campaigns targeted at individuals. We are supporting businesses, food industry, startups, food producers, retailers, HoReCa sector with involvement of more plant-based options. We especially, at least in Poland, like to work with meat and dairy companies who are introducing plant-based alternatives, and some of them are really, really successful. And last but not least, and actually this is going to be the main topic of my presentation, our policy and advocacy activities. So basically, we as ProVeg work with many different organizations, either governmental or intergovernmental, NGOs, researchers, to create more plant-forward policies on different levels as well. We have a separate team working on United Nations level. We have a team working on European Union legislation, and we have people like me who are working more on local level of individual countries. So let's start with some of the opportunities of the things that are happening right now in European Union, because that's actually from my side the most promising area when important food policies may change for better. at least most of them, for better. This is like the general scope, let's say, of the areas of policies where food and agriculture play a big role, and where the more plant-forward approach, where where alternative proteins could take a part in. The biggest circle is the European Green Deal, which is the strategy of European Union in which we, as EU, plan to become the first climate-neutral continent in the world, and more specific target for the next years to come, to reduce by 55% the emission of greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030 compared with 1990 levels. Then, of course, we have also common agricultural policy, which aims to support farmers and improve agricultural productivity, ensuring a stable supply of affordable food for all of EU citizens. We have some smaller circles which are still very important policies related with the biggest one, with the biggest ones, and I would like to discuss few of them in the following slides. So let's start with Farm to Fork strategy announced in 2020, which is the heart of the European Green Deal, and they have many really promising, at least on paper, promising goals to reduce the environmental impact of our European food system by, for example, reducing the use of pesticides, reducing nutrient losses, reducing fertilizer use, reducing the sales of antimicrobials for farmed animals, and developing, improving, growing the area in which organic farming takes place. And it will be delivered by very different set of actions. From my point of view, from our point of view, a really interesting approach is a better food labeling, sustainability labeling, introducing the sustainability labeling on the packaging of the food products. So right now, the main information besides the name, brand, food producer that we have on the product is nutritional value. But for example, we almost never have any information about, for example, what is the environmental impact of the specific food item. This could change under the Farm to Fork strategy. It will take probably some extra next years, but it is possible. The same goes for some other aspects, like more social aspects that could be introduced on a food labeling, or for example, from the point of view of food waste, it's also a heated discussion right now of how can we switch the current system of best before and use by dates, which is creating some confusion among consumers, resulting in up to 10% of food waste in European Union. So they are planning to change it, to make it more understandable for the consumers. Going deeper into the topic of plant-based alternatives, we see a huge battle right now in European Union, in many different national countries, about whether the soya burger, the plant-based sausage, the cashew cheese could be called using the meaty and dairy denominations. So a few years ago, European Union decided that it is not possible for the products like oat milk to be called oat milk, and for the products like soya yogurt to be called soya yogurt. So in general, any products and the plant-based products, plant-based dairy products cannot use animal-based references. They need to come up with a different naming. And it is, let's say, the state for the last few years. 3 years ago, there was a really heated discussion of whether this kind of ban should be introduced to meat products, and we were having as ProVeg this so-called veggie burger ban campaign. The other aspect that was also discussed there was Amendment 171, which was basically a further restrictions to plant-based dairy nomenclature. Fortunately, both of those amendments were rejected. And we, as ProVeg, had a really great opportunity to get involved in some of the campaigns, like gaining signatures under petitions, sending out statements to many different decision makers from different countries, to different MIPs, to national organizations as well, to discuss why this kind of ban should not be implemented. And we finally succeeded, but right now we have this discussion about whether plant-based products could use the animal-based names is right now more on a local level of individual countries, and the issue is that in all of those countries, there's a different argumentation that is being used. It's the legislation is created from a different angle, with a different argumentation, on a different pace, with a different results. So for companies who are having their distributions in many countries, it is a challenge. In Poland right now, there are some postulates from animal-based industry organizations, but right now without a specific legislation initiative currently. But of course it may pop up soon. As Alicja mentioned, we have election this year in October or November. It's yet to be decided, but we will see if this topic in Poland will pop up. Hopefully not. Another topic that we as ProVeg have been involved in recently is school schemes. So in general, European Union is supporting the distribution of fruit, vegetables, milk and milk products in schools, and is spending millions of euros every year for this distribution. And for many different reasons, like environmental, animal welfare reasons, food intolerances reasons like lactose intolerance, allergy to cow milk protein, we were advocating for introduction of plant-based milk in this program to make this program more inclusive for for children who cannot consume dairy or just choose to eat plant-based products. After some discussions, some petitions, some campaigning, unfortunately for this setup program, our and of course other organizations who were also advocating for this topic postulates was not MAPs decided to not include plant-based milk in this program. Hopefully for the next editions of this program, it will be a little bit easier to come back to this discussion and finally introduce plant-based milk and plant-based alternatives to the school scheme program. Another topic, this is really a kind of paradoxical, I would say, that on one side, European Union, for example, in their farm to fork strategy, is informing that we should consume less red meat. This kind of approach is also mentioned in the Beating Cancer strategy. But on the other side, European Union is still promoting financing to promote red meat consumption and dairy consumption. So it kind of doesn't make sense, to finance from one side bigger increase in consumption of those products, and from the other side, this kind of discouragement from eating those products. We raised the campaign with exactly the name of "This Makes No Sense." it was a campaign aimed for policymakers to kind of revise this promotional strategy, and currently the final result is a little bit postponed, so we are still waiting for the current results and how the next system will look like. Hopefully, meat would be not promoted from EU funds within this program. So I gave some of the things that were happening in the last years, and I would like to briefly finish in the next slides my presentation with some of the recommendations that we as ProVeg recently developed. So the first one from the EU point of view regarding, for example, the labeling and marketing standards. So about the denomination nomenclature to allow the plant-based product to be called how they want to be. So veggie burgers should be called in that way if the producer decides to. We also encourage European Union to create the EU-wide definitions of vegan and vegetarian products, because currently individual countries either have this definition or don't have the definitions. Sometimes are different, so for some of the food producers it is a confusion. We advocate for introducing the sustainability labeling in general, and if it will be possible to put it in the front of packaging. From the topic of public food procurement, Alicja mentioned the issue that we should have, for example, the plant-based food in our canteens. That's also the topic for European Union. Is also a topic for Poland. From the European Union point of view, making 45 plant-based products eligible for organic certification will be also very, very, very helpful. When you talk about the tax system right now, it's not the case for Poland, but for many European countries, there is a huge difference between, for example, the VAT rate put on a soy milk and cow milk, and it's always the case that there's a higher VAT rate for plant-based products. It would be amazing if we could create equal VAT rates for those products, and if possible, introduce 0% VAT rates for plant-based foods like fruit, vegetables, to encourage to a higher consumption of those products. And when we talk about subsidies, revising EU agricultural promotion policy, I've discussed it a few slides ago, and increase research and development funding for plant-based innovation would also help in growing of the sector of animal proteins. More details about those specific postulates could be found here in our fresh report, Smart Protein Policy Brief. So if you want to take a picture like Marysia, or to scan QR code, it's a moment to do so. And I'm moving forward to some of our local policy recommendations for Poland. Some of them, of course, overlap with the more international recommendations, but we believe it's also doable to introduce them in Poland. So, for example, like updating and improving our national dietary guidelines, for example, to create guidelines for people who follow a vegan or vegetarian diets. Right now, there is no specific information of how vegans, vegetarians, the rules that are there are not created by public administration organ. Introducing more plant-based options in a public canteens. It's also a heated topic right now in Poland. There are even some legislation initiatives from the point of view of Senate, and hopefully it is possible to push them to make it actually a law. Right now, it's a kind of maybe surprising fact, but there is like one public institution in Poland where vegetarian meals could be introduced, but let's say by law, and it's actually prisons. So only the prisoners in Poland can decide if they want to have a vegetarian options, and if they want, then it should be respected, which gives kind of the idea that maybe this kind of law could be introduced also to hospitals, to schools, to offices and any other public canteens. And yeah, actually that would be it from my side. I can see that we have still 10 minutes left for discussion, so maybe there are some questions that we'll be happy to answer them with Alicja. Thank you.
If you want to read them aloud yourself, or
okay,
I could read them.
Maybe we can read them.
Yeah.
I guess some
Okay,
of them are for me and some for Alicja, or for both of us.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll do this then. Is it on? Is it okay? It is. So there was quite some recent media coverage talking about plant-based alternatives being a bubble that's about to burst. What do you make of that, and did it affect your work in any way?
I mean, from my point of view, I mean, there are arguments like this. I wouldn't say that they are. I would say that the sales results of those products show that it's not a bubble. Of course, when talking about the sustainable food system, let's say the bigger increase of vegetables, of fruit, of legumes should be in the first place, but still plant-based products, alternative proteins in general, including, for example, cultivated meat, will have a big role in making our food systems sustainable. Of course, in the 2 last years, just like Alicja mentioned, the sales were not, I mean, were still growing, but maybe not in such a high pace as in the previous years. But it's still growing, and it's still growing faster than meat and dairy, which is actually, for example, in Poland, declining. So, I mean, I would say that these are some of the just to. I mean that I would say that meat and dairy industry are starting, at least a part of them, starting to get worried about the growth of this sector. And probably we'll hear many more voices like this. Sometimes it's a constructive feedback. Sometimes it's more like a gossip, just to discourage us from talking about it. Alicja, what do you think?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, we saw the coverage, but Poland is on a different stage right now than, for example, United States. So it wasn't really a discussion in Poland, I think, so much as it was in the United States. The research from Nielsen, for example, shows that last year all the plant-based categories grew faster than animal-based categories. In Poland, we had different discussions about, for example, the idea of banning meat. That was evolved a lot about misinformation, and it was very about making stereotypical view on the plant-based activists. So this was a more heated debate and not about the sales, I would say.
I would say that this discussion was more in US when Beyond Meat prices just dropped a lot. But, you know, if, for example, Apple shares would drop a lot, you wouldn't announce that, you know, the mobile phones are going extinct and nobody will use it. So that's actually a similar case with plant-based meat. I mean, some of the biggest producers in different countries may have some problems, but the industry as a whole is still growing. And yeah, that would be, I guess, our answer to this question.
In which DG unit of the European Commission would you like more people concerned with your policy recommendations?
I guess Agri, NV. So the people responsible for agriculture, environment. I guess when we basically, I would say that, okay, the 3 levels and the 3 areas of our main interest and argumentation as ProVeg are that both environment, health, and agriculture. And as mentioned on the first slide, we are an organization that kind of tries to mix different approaches, let's say talking about health, justice, animal welfare, environment, and this kind of mixed approach from our side would be the best solution. So yeah, that would be the answer. Alicja?
As RoślinnieJemy, we don't work on the plant-based campaign on the European level as much as ProVeg, so I believe it was a question for you.
Okay.
But I would say that we would like, in general, the food system transformation to be a bigger discussion on the EU level across all the sectors.
Can you compare the effectiveness on animal welfare improvements between alternative protein improvements or advocating directly for higher animal welfare standards in factory farming? Any idea what is better?
I guess it's impossible to compare it that easily. I guess when talking about about alternative proteins, we also discuss about different aspects like health, environment, etc. So animal welfare is also important, has important role, but I would say when we as ProVeg try to fight for improvements in area also like both animal welfare and the other mentioned, so like health and environment. But if we talk about comparison, I guess we'll have to have a really specific campaign. And it's not that easy to compare, I guess.
Yes, I would agree. I don't think it's so easy to directly compare it. I was talking a little bit about it in the presentation. But as Anima International, we are doing both. We also have the welfare campaigns and the plant-based campaigns. And I think like this is the topic that is somehow or should be balanced. And it's still a big question what is more effective or how can we make it the most effective as possible. And I feel like both have different problems that should still be discussed. For example, in plant-based campaign, there is still a question about small animal replacement, sorry. Like, for example, if we talk about the climate impact of the animal production, you can find the information that poultry is the most eco-friendly of animal products. From the welfare point of view, it's the worst you can choose because you have the biggest amount of animals, the biggest number of animals that are being produced in a farm. So I feel like both topics, welfare campaigns and plant-based campaigns, should be balanced and should exist together.
We have a question here.
At my question for ProVeg, how do you deal with that topic that you make sure or deal with the topic that due to some recommendations like due to some that it doesn't make that your recommendations do not make people eat more small animals, like instead white chicken instead of red chicken, red meat.
Yeah, I would say that from our point of view, the general message is to eat less animal-based products and not, for example, because from the environmental point of view, like say switching from cows to chicken would kind of make sense. From the point of animal welfare, for example, I guess that animal welfare organizations could also claim that, switching from poultry to cows could make sense. And in that way, our work wouldn't make sense. We would be two opposite groups fighting on arguments. I guess it's like a general consensus among both animal welfare and environmental organizations that we are working for, let's say, a smaller amount of animal-based products in general without distinguishing. Okay, sometimes it needs to be distinguished because for climate reasons, of course, it's better to talk about cow and milk, but the general messaging is about less animal-based products consumption, or actually in ProVeg we are trying to put it in a more positive way, so a bigger share of veggies, of fruit, of legumes in our diets. So we kind of try not to fight between organizations who are our supporters.
Okay.
So what kind of talent is needed in the EU animal welfare policy space? Any talent bottlenecks?
I think maybe we need.
Yes,
It was sorry. I think that my first thought is that the bottleneck would be the general law knowledge and the legislation knowledge. So it would be nice to have more people with bigger experience on the EU, but also on the Polish level, from my perspective, on this whole process of legislation, which is obviously complicated and influenced by different contexts of lobbying and other political backgrounds. So knowledge from or expertise from legislation process and from law, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
And when you talk about, let's say, skills, like more personal skills, I guess that communicativeness, openness, trying to reach a specific person with a different arguments, because for some of the people, the topics of animal welfare will be more preferable. For some of them, environment will be on the first place. And there are also many different arguments for advocating for more plant-forward policies. We had COVID recently, which was also kind of caused by the fact that we are still eating wild animals. So, for example, this pandemic's preparedness for the next years, we are aware that in the next years, probably the next pandemics will take place, and it's very possible that it will be caused by our current animal agricultural system. So, yeah, trying with a different messaging to different people with a different approach, but it requires some kind of, I would say, flexibility, communicativeness, openness for discussions, and not going into argument too hard when somebody disagrees with you, but trying to find a common ground on which we can work.
Yes, I would agree, because our campaign, we come from different backgrounds. But I would agree with Marcin that it's very important to be able to change your arguments and in a way think in the way that your or the politician you are talking with is thinking, and trying to find the arguments that would convince this person, and trying to understand why this person thinks the way it thinks, or why this person is voting against our arguments.
And this will be our last question. How does one go about allowing common names for plant-based products like milk, butter, sausage, while also maintaining good quality standards? So if I want proper, or this person wants proper butter, I can be sure it is real butter and not. Yeah.
Can I see the question?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I think I got that.
I think it's about confusion.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that RoślinnieJemy's research shows that in general people in Poland, at least in Poland, are not confused with the naming that is currently used. So at least it's not the case for plant-based meat. Usually those products are labeled, let's say that the being plant-based is their main selling point. So actually it's really, if you have the reading skills at the level, I would say primary school, it's not a problem to guess that this product is plant-based or do not contain meat. With milk, I would say it's similar. I mean, maybe we should come from a different angle. Maybe not disallowing producers to use the word milk, but for example, to add some information that would be a kind of distinguishing it that shows that this is plant-based. So, for example, we are having as a ProVeg, we are working with our V-label certification, and it's an easy information for people who follow a vegan vegetarian diet that this product is either vegan or vegetarian. So maybe this kind of information on the front packaging would be easier for consumers to understand that, okay, this product doesn't contain animal products that I don't want.
But also, I would like to add that companies are more creative than we think. And for example, we have this ban already with the milk and dairy alternatives, and we have products like it's not milk. So still, they, in a creative way, are not calling it milk, but also making sure that the consumer is sure what he or she is buying and how they should use the product or which kind of qualities they can expect.
Yeah, that was our last question. So,
Okay,
so
so thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay,